Orlando's 11-year-old Julian Newman has found out firsthand the power of the internet.
Julian Newman.
This is Julian Newman.
Please welcome from Orlando, Julian Handles Newman.
11-year-old Julian Newman.
Teenage basketball dream team. Julian, they are taking the internet by storm with their incredible dribbling skills.
Julian is already thinking college ball. He said he wants to play for John Calipari and the defending champion Kentucky Wildcats and wants to be like the Clippers' Chris Paul one day.
Basketball means a lot to me because I want to one day be in the NBA and hope I accomplish that goal.
It's not about the starting point, nor is it about the comparison with your peers. To succeed, the key is to have the determination to reach your destination. Julian Newman was a unique phenomenon, a very undersized guard with fancy handles that created lines at the doors of high school halls. He was the definition of shifty. He could shoot, he could drive, but above all, he could humiliate the opponent in front of him. And everyone wondered what the future in professional basketball would hold for this child prodigy. But time proved that that was just a fantasy. Not only was Julian not able to make it to the NBA, but he didn't even end up playing college ball. What really happened? Why did such a talented kid with so much social media traction not get a spot at any of the 350-plus Division I colleges? Why at only 23 years old, his professional career is already considered a failure? The answer may be deeper than it seems. So, let's talk about it. Since the age of 3, Julian had a huge love for basketball, mainly because his father, Jamie Newman, soon introduced him to this truly addictive world. Jamie was extremely demanding, forcing his son to play with regulation-sized balls in rec leagues against much older opponents. He also forced him to go through some extremely tough workouts, something that can certainly make a kid hate basketball. But not Julian. It was in his genetics, and that effort was pure fun for him. And all that determination paid off. Because Newman, at just 11 years old, was promoted to the varsity team after scoring 91 points in a middle school game. And not only that, in his first year on the team, he averaged 12.4 points, 11 assists, and 4.3 steals per game. Julian, being 3 years younger than a usual high school freshman and much smaller in size than guys his age, was leading the state of Florida in assists. It was simply unreal. That, however, was just the beginning. In 6th grade, after averaging 17 points per game, some news portals like the Tampa Bay Times called him the most marketed 12-year-old basketball player in the world. All this while his highlights went viral on YouTube and his name appeared in national media outlets like Sports Illustrated. And even more incredible, Julian made appearances on television shows such as Steve Harvey, The Ellen DeGeneres Show, and Good Morning America. Julian was even invited to perform at halftime during an Orlando Magic NBA game. What he didn't know was that it would be the last time he would ever step on the court of a professional basketball game. By the time Julian hit his sophomore year, he was already making history, shattering Florida's long-standing scoring record, one that had held strong since 1998. This young phenom didn't just break the record, he blew right past it, putting the entire state on notice. And talk about lighting up the scoreboard, Julian was putting up insane numbers, averaging nearly 35 points a game that season. But with college scouts still sleeping on him, Julian made a power move. He transferred to Prodigy Prep, a school in Orlando founded by none other than his father. Sound familiar? It's a page straight out of LeVar Ball's playbook with Spire, a bold, last-ditch effort to grab the attention of those college recruiters. And it's here where things started to go wrong. It was decision time for Julian, the moment when this extraordinary talent would finally choose his college and take that next big step. At least, that was the plan. But something strange happened. No college came knocking, at least not publicly. Hard to believe, right? Especially for a guard who was a certified walking bucket throughout high school. Jamie swore up and down that Julian had a stack of D1 offers, but reality had other plans. Instead of heading to a big-time college program, Julian ended up signing with the basketball tournament, a league filled with former players and social media influencers. And let's be honest, the competition wasn't exactly top tier, especially for a young prospect with dreams of making it to the NBA. So the big question, how does this happen? How does a player with Julian's talent not even land a spot on a minor college conference roster, even if it's deep in the rotation? A lot of folks were scratching their heads asking the same question. But here's the thing, Julian Newman comes with a lot of red flags. And those red flags, they played a huge role in why recruiters stayed away. Julian's need for the spotlight turned him into a polarizing figure, and his father was right there in full LeVar Ball mode, pushing to get his son's name everywhere. He believed there was no such thing as bad publicity. If people were talking, the future was bright. But the reality? It didn't pan out that way. The hype didn't secure the future they had in mind. Opposing players showed up to games with one mission: humiliate Julian Newman and snag their own spot on the next House of Highlights reels. Everyone wanted to be the one to take down the chosen one and claim the glory as the hero who toppled the hype. To his opponents, Julian was the definition of overrated, and every time he stepped on the court, they came at him with everything they had. 100%, no let-up. And eventually, all that pressure, all those battles, started to wear Julian down. When it came to players with real NBA futures like LaMelo Ball, Julian simply got outclassed in head-to-head matchups. To be the best high school player in the country, you have to beat the other top dogs, take the heat, and handle criticism like a pro. You've got to master your emotions better than anyone else. But for Julian, that just wasn't the case. Some of the blame here falls squarely on his father, who first put the national spotlight on Julian. He tried to market every inch of his son's game, pushing out merchandise and even creating a YouTube docuseries about the kid's life. It was a full-court press to build the brand before the player was fully ready. Sound familiar? An origin story very similar to the Ball family in many ways. But here's the difference. The Balls were ready for the spotlight. They had the talent, the genetics, and the mentality to match. And at the end of the day, Chino Hills was unbeatable, dominant over all rivals, the best high school team in the nation, and no one could touch them. In a sense, all the extra attention was more of a burden than a blessing for Julian. The pressure piled on, and it seemed like he burned out before he even had a chance to truly shine. He just wasn't mature enough to handle the weight of the spotlight. Before long, he found himself wearing the label of the most hated high school player in the country. Was it fair? Probably not. But his attitude certainly didn't help the cause. Julian got caught up in multiple on-court altercations, tarnishing his image in the eyes of college scouts everywhere. It was likely frustration kicking in, the realization that his dreams of making it big were slipping further and further out of reach. And that swagger Julian and his father carried, it came back to bite them, hard, and in a way that might be irreversible. Early on, Julian showed he could dominate, filling up the stat sheet with ease. At just 12 years old, he was running the floor like a seasoned vet. But here's the irony. As his scoring skyrocketed, his overall game took a nosedive. The better he got at putting up points, the worse he became as a complete player. Jamie Newman saw the hype building around his son and went all in, encouraging Julian to shoot more, pass less, and focus on filling up the box score. The results? Julian turned into a selfish shooting guard trapped in a diminutive point guard's body. His flashy dribbling became more for show than for substance, and his game started to look like a B-grade Harlem Globetrotters performance. Far from the skill set needed for a future pro baller, Julian stagnated, locked into a role that was never going to translate to the next level. In his mind, he was still the best player in Florida, boasting scoring averages that could intimidate anyone, but the reality was vastly different. He hadn't evolved in the critical areas of the game, while his peers, they were leaving him in the dust. Julian's skills never progressed enough to overcome his height deficiency. Standing at just 5'7", he kept playing as if all his opponents were still his size, like that 12-year-old phenom who could out-dribble everyone in sight. But as the competition got taller, stronger, and faster, Julian never adapted. He tried to stick with the same flash and flair that once dazzled crowds, but against bigger and better players, it just didn't work. He never adjusted his game to take on taller, more skilled defenders. He never became the floor general he needed to be and kept playing like he was the star of the show, when in reality, the game had passed him by. But without a doubt, the biggest factor keeping Julian out of professional basketball isn't entirely his fault. It's his size. At just 5'7", it's unrealistic to think a G League team, let alone an NBA squad, would sign a shoot-first, ineffective point guard who struggles to involve his teammates. And let's be honest, the scouts knew it too. Despite his high school scoring numbers, Julian's value as a player never convinced the college recruiters. His flashy style couldn't mask the gaps in his game, and when it came to fitting into a team at the next level, he simply didn't measure up, literally and figuratively. The NBA is the best mirror of world basketball. The style of play of the league usually represents the evolution and the trends that will end up taking over the world's game. And in the NBA, the guards are getting bigger and bigger. Not only is the concept of the pass-first point guard becoming extinct with the advent of big combo guards who are switchable on defense, small guards in general are also becoming extinct. Who has been the last prospect comparable to Chris Paul that has been successful? Or Rajon Rondo? The versatility of the rest of the players on the court, who can dribble and generate advantages for their teammates in every possession, has caused this profile to become obsolete. And Julian Newman grew up in the worst possible timing. Just over a decade ago, one of the best ultra-small guards in basketball history hit the pro basketball radar. 5'6" Akil Carr had made high school history. He was a player who, through hard work and humility, received as many as 28 Division I offers. At his peak, he earned a 92 rating from ESPN, which later dropped to an 80, but still, he was ranked as the 9th best point guard in the country. To put it in perspective, he was light years ahead of Julian Newman in the eyes of basketball scouts. However, after a brief stint in the then D-League, where he managed to play 14 games, his fate was the same as Julian's: the basketball tournament. It's simple. To make it in basketball with a frame as small as Julian's, you need something truly special. You've got to be a unicorn in your own right. When genetics gives you a disadvantage, you've got to counter it with an elite basketball IQ, a tireless work ethic, and a drive for technical and tactical perfection, plus an unshakable mentality that refuses to back down from the giants on every court. While Julian has talent, his size and incomplete development were a recipe for disaster. His fate was sealed the moment his father tried to mold him into a player he was never meant to be.